in this film.
Thank
And
you.
I read that it was based on this tragic situation that happened, right? But there were many things as a filmmaker you could talk about and write about. Why did you choose this subject?
I've always been interested in fringe conspiracy theories and how people are drawn to movements like that. I'd had some personal experience with someone who was drawn to this movement actually, and as part of trying to understand that, I found out about this crime, and I was really drawn to the father-son storyline at the center of this crime, and how a 15-year-old kid who's homeschooled and kind of isolated, like like Joe Kane was in this, what that experience would be like. And also just it felt like a story that touched on a lot of themes that I think are really relevant and sort of important and interesting to me.
I love it because I didn't know about the sovereign state situation. I love that you are creating something that will allow us to think critically and see the choices. And there are lots of things about what he said I like, you know? So I was like, yes. But talk to me a little bit about, of course, choosing your cast, which is so pivotal in something like this because the father and son are incredible actors. I mean, everybody in the film was fabulous, but these two, just the magic, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So how did you choose them? How did you get that to happen?
I mean, we were just incredibly lucky to have, they're two of the best actors. They're fantastic, and I'd been a fan of Nick Offerman for a long time, a fan of Jacob, and Dennis, Nancy Travis, Martha Plimpton, Thomas Mann. We really pulled an all-star cast together for a movie, especially this size. And so it started really with Dennis Quaid becoming interested around the same time as Nick Offerman, and they came together, and then Jacob really quickly after that. And then around those three, really the rest of the film and the rest of the cast was kind of coalesced around those three parts.
This movie engages you right away, where you actually care about every single person on the cop sides, on the sides of, the father and son. And that is so important because if you don't care about anything, then why are we watching this film? So
Yeah.
it was really intriguing. And I can feel this energy from the teenager, from Jacob, with this thinking and wanting to see what, and in his eyes, you could see the things his dad was saying can resonate. But then on the other hand, you can see the other side in this torn. So it's so brilliant. Um,
Thank you.
what kind of, maybe you didn't have to, but when you got ready to shoot some scenes, what were some of the scenes that were actually the most difficult for you that you felt for the actors to do? What were some of those scenes, if any? I'm sure there were many, but
Yeah, there were a lot of big moments in the movie that were difficult. I think certainly Nick's speeches were just, that's a lot of technical jargon that doesn't make a lot of sense in some of those speeches, and a lot of memorization. So I was nervous, I think, for Nick on those days because he just had so much, heavy lifting to do there and to make that compelling. But he's so professional, and he just showed up and knew it. It was remarkable how he had everything, just completely nailed down. Um, those were tough days, I would say. There's a scene between Jacob and Nick that gets kind of physical. That was a very tough scene, and I think for the actors, because they had built such a rapport and like a genuine affection for each other at that point, that it felt difficult to go there. And then there's just a big climactic, sort of action scene at the end of the movie that was just technically really difficult. We were supposed to shoot that over a number of days, and we had some bad weather roll into Northwest Arkansas where we were shooting, and it shut down our set. And so we had to take that sequence that was supposed to be shot in a number of days and shoot the whole thing in one day. And it had to be reconfigured because of that, really quickly. And that was probably the most stressful day of the whole production for me.
well, I like the fact that this film, you're not afraid to show. You're not afraid to talk and tell. And that's what we need in filmmakers today. We need the truth. Whether
Yeah.
you'd like it to hear it or not, or whatever that person's truth is, it may not be yours, but you're hearing it, you're
Yeah.
seeing it. and you're understanding it. And I think for me, that's the quality of something like this, where I'm intrigued. And like I said, there were some themes that I said, yeah, he's got a point there. I'm
Yeah.
buying a house and the bank owns it. Do I own it? I don't think I
Yeah.
own it. You know what I mean? There's some really relevant day to
Yeah.
day human things that people want to know and
Yeah.
question. And,
Yeah. I,
you
I
know,
think I think the what I've found is, it's so easy to kind of just condemn or to judge or to label good or bad, but the reality is that doesn't sort of help anything move forward. That's not a starting place for any kind of real reconciliation or solve. So for this, this is a horrific tragedy, but it was what we wanted to do is take a look at, well, how did this happen? Rather than just say like good guy, bad guy, how is somebody drawn into something like this? And I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I think mental health plays a component, but I think a lot of people drawn to these sort of fringe ideologies are driven there because they experience some sort of very valid injury. I think a lot of what Jerry is talking about in the movie about, the banks and foreclosure, I think after the 2008 housing crisis, there were a lot of people who lost their homes and lost everything. And then they saw rich people getting richer. And then they're sort of told, well, you need to stop being a conspiracy theorist. And I think then as soon as you lose trust in institutions and in official sources of information, all bets are off. Somebody like a Jerry Kane can step forward with another answer, and if it sounds plausible, then people will cling to that. And so I think kind of the loss of trust in systems and how our systems are sort of engineered towards conflict in a lot of ways is what kind of maybe on a more thematic level, what we were trying to explore with the film, without being preachy about it. I think
right.
I think there's also, when there's themes, sort of political adjacent or socioeconomic themes embedded in a movie, there can be sort of a reaction to like kind of grab the microphone and lecture a little bit. But I think we tried as much as possible not to editorialize and to just sort of let people take away what they wanted to take away from it.
From a historical point of view, the way humanity has been shaped, and from all cultures, from the beginning of time to all centuries, we have all these layers of problems, and you think, oh my God, humans, what are we doing? What are we doing? And the loss of control and trust. When I get in a plane, I'm trusting that that pilot knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Everything that we do in public, we're trusting people to do it right. So when that trust is broken, you feel hurt. You feel like, wait,
Yeah.
why are you trying to manipulate me? You know what I mean? It's all these
Yeah.
things. So I just think this film could be a starting point for real conversation and real dialogue, right? Which
Thank you. Yeah.
I applaud you for that. I want to talk about the look of the film. I think the look was really important to making us feel every moment. So, what
Mhm.
about those choices? How did you pick a cinematographer, and how did you decide you want to set the tone for this movie?
Yeah, I mean, we tried as much as possible to, the visual design of the movie is very simplistic. It's very kind of stripped down. We shot everything either locked off on a tripod or handheld. There's not a lot of moving camera. There's not, again, sort of this ethos of like not wanting to editorialize too much with even the filmmaking. And so that was sort of a starting point. We knew we wanted to do something fairly elemental and simple and stripped down to just kind of present things bluntly. And I think it was a decision we also made because the dialogue and the characters are so kind of over the top at times, and it's so bizarre that I think to add an extra layer of emphasis over it or style over it could have swung it into parody or could have swung it, into an insincere direction. And so everything we tried to kind of lean into naturalism or simplicity with the visual design of the film. And I think all the departments really work together well towards that.
And I think that's why it works, because the simpleness of it is what makes it so interesting, because
Yeah.
immediately you are part of that world.
Yeah.
I especially love we're seeing the side of the training from the police side of it, which I love those scenes. I think they were incredibly and well done. So then it's just so many things happen there, emotionally, and I think that's such a kudos to you. Now, in writing this film, because you're the writer as well, it's when you sat down to write, all these things are in your mind, right? You're thinking this, you're thinking that. And I'm sure there are many other topics that you could lay out in there. What was it trying to trim this down to where you feel like that? What was that process like? I know it's a blunt question I've asked you, but
No, I think that kind of does get at the heart of it. Like with issues this complex and sort of big, like when you're talking about systemic, you're talking about a story that has like systemic critique, or and you have multiple characters and multiple storylines. There is sort of a version of this that's like 200-page script and goes on, but I don't think, I don't know. Again, it was my feeling to like try to distill this down to something as sort of elemental as possible, and to do that, we really just focused on the father-son relationship, and then try to embed, as much as you can through the filmmaking or through subtle ways, like embed that meaning in a way that it can be extrapolated out by an audience. But it's kind of everything with the writing and with the editing and all of it was really sort of a process of like trying to distill and end up with something that felt really sort of elemental. It's not a long film, it's 100 minutes. The storylines are the police storyline is fairly pared down, and it's not to say that it's not because there's a lack of depth there. It's actually, I think, because there's so much that can sort of be discussed there, that I think the choice on our end was to say, let's try to present something a little bit more streamlined and let people extrapolate. And I think some people will appreciate that and others maybe not. So.
And you know what? They don't. Too bad for them. Right? The people who are going to love this film are the ones who understand what we want and why we like it. And who cares
Yeah.
about the other people who don't like it? Well, too bad. It's your loss. It's if, and again, it's subjective. You can like something, you don't have to like it, but you could at least understand where it's coming from. And I
Yeah,
think that's
exactly.
the message that you did.
Yeah.
What would you hope that an audience member would take away when they see this thoughtful film?
I hope that they do engage with it thoughtfully. I think your last point, art is subjective and cinema is, film is subjective. These stories are subjective. This isn't going to be a movie for everyone, but I hope that people engage with it and kind of try to look past the first layer of it. There is a lot embedded in it, for, from the filmmaker's standpoint, from all of us sort of on the filmmaking side of it, there is a lot of meaning embedded in it, but I think you have to keep an open mind and you have to sort of look for it. It's not a movie that on its face you're going to completely, it's a movie that asks questions. It's not so much just going to give you an answer. And I think for people who enjoy that kind of film, they're going to really love this film. I think for people that are, not looking for it, or maybe wish that it was more heavily editorialized, or wish that there was more of a message or something, I think they're going to feel that, well, what was that I just watched, And so I think there's going to be maybe a bit of that reaction on both, but either way, what I hope is that people do engage with it. And if there is a core message at the end of it, it's really a film about empathy. It's a film about saying, regardless of how crazy you think somebody's idea is or where they're coming from, usually when you step into their shoes, you can understand it. You don't have to agree with it, but there's usually a reason, even if that reason is just mental illness, even if it's, hey, this person's actually ill. That's why they're not making sense, And I think there's a lot of, our culture promotes a lot of just condemnation and sort of judgment. I think we need to reframe things a little bit.
Need films like this because we need to question things, on a daily basis. We need to question things. We need to question our governments. We need to question organizations and corporations. We have to have accountability. And I
Yeah.
think if it does anything, maybe it opens eyes for us to be more accountable, to be more forthright, to ask questions. But what I also got a lot from this film, the love between a father and son is so special, you know?
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think when you see the what he wants for him is so much more than what he wants for himself, that
yeah,
he's willing to give everything that he could for his son, right or wrong, it doesn't matter, but he's willing to give his life, his give himself.
yeah, yeah. There's a real emotional core at the center of it, and the relationship, especially between Nick and Jacob and their performances, I think also drive that home
Yeah.
in a way
And
that's really exciting.
it's an important tone because the relationship between a man and his son is such a special thing. And I see today sometimes we're losing that fabric, you know,
Hmm.
and it's kind of sad. But to see a film, regardless of the tone, the storyline, or what you're trying to say, we see that there between these two,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's really important.
yeah. It's the primary relationship for a lot of men is how did they interact with their dad, and I think that's uh the sins of the father is certainly kind of like a theme that a lot of films touch on, but uh, I think that in this story, there's also it's also about a young guy trying to find his own identity, and that feeling like a betrayal in a lot of ways, and I think that's interesting too. So it's sort of both from the father's side and from how the son is experiencing it.
Well, Chris, I just said, like, I think you did a great job. I can't wait to see what's next on
Thank
your
you.
plate. So I'll be following your journey and everything else. And I learned so much watching this film, many, many things, many, many
Thank
questions
you
and
very much.
thoughts and all these issues. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, okay, okay, I can see that. Oh, I understand that. So so I'm a fan, and that's
Thank
what it
you.
is. So again, I'm really thank you, Accolade PR, for allowing me to have a chat with you.
Thank you so much. That's really sweet. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. We'll be letting everybody know about this film.
It's a limited release, but it's a very we are in a number of cities, so hopefully people do get a chance to look us up and see if it's playing near them. And
Yes,
if not, it'll be available on VOD and on demand also. But hopefully people see it in the theater.
yes. True story indeed. Maybe tragic, but very educational. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we need today. So again,
Thank,
thank you so much.
thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.